dauden islarioi.
Okay, great.
Gaur
I'll keep it this way.
gurekin daukagu, hain zuzen ere, lehenik eta behin Iban Rodriguez, bera da Leioako alkatea. Egunon, Iban?
Yeah, I am.
Egunon bai, egunon guztioi.
So it's fine.
Bigarrenik badaukagu Anuela Ristani, she's Vice Mayor of Tirana in Albania. Anuela, pleased to meet you and thank you for accepting our invitation for being here today.
Gracias.
Finally, we have Charles Landry. You know, he's been, barkatu, euskaraz esango dut, bera izan da moderatzailea Bilbao Metropoli-30 batera aste honetan, eta atzo izan zen gure islari nagusia. Charles, good morning, how are you?
Good morning, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay. Bueno, como decía, hemos llegado hoy a la última convocatoria de este ciclo de webinares, Metrópolis de Futuro, que Bilbao Metropoli-30 organiza dentro de su ciclo de encuentros, conferencias con expertos y expertas internacionales en distintas temáticas que entendemos que pueden ser de interés para nuestro área metropolitana. Y hoy, bueno, siendo viernes y el último día de este ciclo, creo que contamos con una temática esperanzadora, me gustaría pensar. Y es que contamos con dos iniciativas de cómo involucrar a los niños y niñas en el diseño de las ciudades. Y si hay algo que tiene el futuro, que es el área de trabajo en el que Bilbao Metropoli-30 está focalizada, es precisamente eso, el futuro, ¿no? Y a veces se nos olvida que estas pequeñas personitas serán nuestro futuro, con lo cual creo que es un bonito broche para este ciclo. Voy a comentaros que en la parte inferior de la pantalla tenéis disponible un icono para acceder a la traducción simultánea por parte de Marian, que también nos ha acompañado a lo largo de esta semana, y podéis utilizar el chat de la plataforma para hacernos llegar las preguntas que queráis, tanto a Iván como a Anuela, para el debate posterior a sus presentaciones. Y I don't know, Charles, if you want to add anything before giving the word to Ivan.
Well, all I would add is I saw a prize-giving process for something called the Real City Award, and then I heard Anuela, and I thought, wow, she's the one we want here. That's all I'll say.
Okay. It's been thanks to you that Anuela is here with us today, so thank you very much for your help. Bueno, besterik gabe, hasiko gara orduan Iban Rodriguezekin, eta Iban nahi duzunean zurea da hitza.
Vale, egunon guztioi, eta lehenengo eta behin gauzatxo bat gustatuko jatan esatea, eta da que los niños no son el futuro, sino sin duda son un presente, ¿vale? Porque no tenemos que pensar en ellos,
sí.
no tenemos que pensar en ellos de aquí a 20 años, sino hoy ya existen y debieran de tener como mínimo los mismos derechos que nosotros. Bueno, yo voy a hacer una presentación para lo que nosotros es sin duda pues un tesoro que tenemos en Leioa, ¿no? Y que son esos niños y niñas. Lehenengo eta behin, egunon guztioi, eta eskerrik asko bertan gure esperientzia kontatzeko aukera emoteagatik, ezta. Como decía, me gustaría empezar dando las gracias a Bilbao Metropoli-30 por hacer posible que Leioa pues cuente su experiencia en un entorno pues tan positivo y desde luego tan divulgativo. I want to thank Anuela Ristani for sharing her experience with us today, and even if it was in a telemetric way, welcome to the Basque Country, Anuela. Dicen que una historia es solo una manera de contar lo sucedido, y resumir lo sucedido en 20 años en tan solo 10 minutos, pues es cuanto menos un poquitín complicado. Es por eso que me he escrito la presentación, ya que si no, sin duda, tendríamos aquí para hablar largo y tendido. La relación de Leioa con los y las niñas viene de hace mucho tiempo. No es casualidad que Leioa, un municipio de 32.000 habitantes, pues cuente con 7 colegios públicos y 6 concertados o privados. Pero es en el 2001 cuando los y las jóvenes empiezan a ser parte del eje municipal. Es entonces, impulsados por la celebración de nuestro 475 aniversario de la desanexión de Erandio, cuando decidimos dar un papel importante a los niños y niñas de aquel entonces, jóvenes hoy. Gracias a la mirada en aquel momento concejal y desgraciadamente hoy ya no está entre nosotros, Vicen, los más pequeños de aquel año enterraron junto al ayuntamiento sus tesoros. Estos tesoros serán desenterrados dentro de poquito, cuando cumplamos 500 años. Fue un proceso participativo, nuevo en aquel entonces, pero muy enriquecedor, y que sin duda ha sido el germen de nuestro cambio. Es así como comienza el diálogo entre ayuntamiento e infancia. Es así también como los responsables políticos firman sus primeros compromisos con la infancia, a la vez que aitites y amamas, personas mayores, comparten y empiezan a compartir vivencias con los más jóvenes. Se empieza a involucrar todo el tejido asociativo y comercio de Leioa en la propia vida de Leioa. Visto el éxito obtenido, se decide seguir trabajando con los y las más jóvenes, en este caso, niños y niñas de entre 7 y 14 años, haciéndoles partícipes de diferentes proyectos que el ayuntamiento ya venía realizando, pero esta vez obteniendo una mirada diferente y sin duda unas nuevas ideas. Es un proceso en el que los adultos reaprenden para que en el proceso los niños y las niñas puedan desplegar sus capacidades de acción, de decisión y de colaboración. Es entonces cuando desde el ayuntamiento se ve la necesidad de diseñar el proyecto o los espacios de juego y reflexión. Era evidente que la mirada de los y las gobernantes, los más adultos, no tenía el mismo enfoque que la de los niños y las niñas. ¿Por qué entonces crearles espacios sin contar con ellos? Se creó un momento común a compartir con la infancia, un Leioa al que habitualmente no tenían acceso. Pero íbamos a más. Había que empezar a organizarlo mejor. Tenía que pasar a ser un eje tractor de la política municipal. Sin duda, un proyecto político, pero no politizado, educativo y social. Un proyecto de comunidad y aprendizaje. Un proyecto que quiere hacer de los procesos de aprendizaje un eje importante en su identidad comunitaria y en su construcción como ciudad, creando vínculo y, sobre todo, capital social. Bajo los ejes de participación, sostenibilidad y vida comunitaria, empiezan a surgir proyectos clave que sin duda nos han llevado al éxito actual. Marcha Peatón, Consejo de la Infancia, Ume Mercatariak, son solo algunos de esos ejemplos que vinieron, se crearon y mantienen Leioa vivo. Y conocedores que estábamos moviendo el queso, que estábamos cambiando nuestra forma de hacer y que esto estaba teniendo un impacto en nuestra sociedad, empezamos a trabajar en utilizar esas derivas personales, convirtiéndolas en un bien común. Es en este momento, en el que se implantan proyectos como Leioa Astarren Ezagutzen Sarea, red de conocimientos, donde personas con diferentes inquietudes comparten diferentes intereses y aprenden unos de los otros. Irakales, espacios de aprendizaje, donde expertos en algunas materias salen a la calle a explicar pues, desde astronomía o desde ciencia y lo divulgan de una manera natural a sus vecinos y vecinas. También Lantaldes, equipos de trabajo que ya desarrollan trabajos más a largo plazo, o Ekintza Tailerra, sin duda, un tiempo de reunión y atención. Y esto, sin querer, nos hizo volver al punto de partida, devolver la ciudad a la infancia. Tenemos, o mejor dicho, estamos obligados a transformar nuestras ciudades para que sean más inclusivas. Sin duda, una ciudad hecha por y para los niños y niñas es más inclusiva. Es una ciudad para todos y todas. Es una ciudad más amable y más confortable. Esa mirada de 1,50 que nos decía Francesco Tonucci, ¿no?, hace que percibamos nuestro pueblo de otra manera. Es en ese momento cuando nace el proyecto Bizibideak, un proyecto creado con la participación de 11 colegios y que conseguimos hacer un mapeo del municipio y sin duda casi más de 26.000 metros de autonomía para nuestros hijos e hijas. Un proyecto que cuenta con la participación de diferentes agentes, pero en el que nuestros más pequeños son la referencia. Un equipo de profesoras, madres y padres, direcciones de colegios, trabajadores municipales como la Policía Municipal, arquitectos, políticos, miembros del Departamento de Salud del Gobierno vasco y otros profesionales son parte de este grupo motor. Sinergias que suponen sumar y nos ayudan a mejorar sin duda nuestro municipio. No está siendo un camino sencillo. Es complicado ver o hacer ver a los técnicos y a las técnicas de la importancia de la mirada de nuestros más jóvenes. Técnicos y técnicas que, como tiene que ser, se basan en validaciones, valga la redundancia, técnicas o jurídicas, pero que desgraciadamente, y aunque en muchas ocasiones van en contra de la Declaración de los Derechos de los Niños y Niñas, discriminan a los más pequeños. Y unido a esto viene nuestro nuevo reto, procedimentar y estructurar la participación en nuestro municipio y no olvidarnos de los y las más chiquis. Procedimentar y estructurar, hemos dicho, y empezamos por algo así de simple, que los y las más pequeñas puedan participar legalmente en las propuestas de presupuestos abiertos. Algo que parece tan sencillo se convierte en imposible cuando de normas, ordenanzas, leyes se refiere. Es por eso que en el Consejo de la Infancia hemos tomado la decisión este año de reflexionar y desarrollar 3 puntos. El primero, promover la participación y los derechos de la infancia en los procesos deliberativos y de participación pensados habitualmente solo para adultos. Por segundo punto, ensayar modelos formativos comunitarios, Open Escola, ideando nuevas reglas de juego y herramientas metodológicas para alcanzar los objetivos de formar a la infancia en procesos de participación y presupuestos participativos. Y el último, hacer un seguimiento de todo el proceso desde el compromiso de la transparencia y la rendición de cuentas. Proceso que no lo estamos haciendo solos, ya que contamos con la ayuda de Aurren Irien Sarea y el Gobierno vasco con Innovask a la cabeza. Creo que es obligación de los y las representantes políticos escuchar, no solo a los que tienen derecho a voto, sino a todos y todas los vecinos y vecinas del municipio. Con ellos, con los y las más mayores, en cierta manera les tenemos tomada la medida. Sin embargo, con los más pequeños se complica la cosa, ya que sin duda son más disruptivos. Me gustaría terminar animando a aquellos que todavía no estén trabajando con los y las más jóvenes a que lo hagan. Ellos son el futuro, pero también el presente, y todo lo que invirtamos en ellos y ellas será prosperidad en el futuro. Algo tan bien reflejado como viene ahí en la viñeta de Francesco Tonucci, caramba, nos escuchan, no debería de ser hoy en día una novedad. Beste barik, nik uste dut, sartu nazela 10 minututan, beraz, eskerrik asko.
Eskerrik asko, zuri, Iban. Muy bonitas experiencias por parte de Leyo a compartir en esta mañana de hoy. Y le vamos a ceder a continuación la palabra a Anuela para que sea ella la que exponga todo el trabajo que se ha hecho en Tirana dentro de este proceso de involucración en el presente, como decía Iván, de los niños y niñas. So, Anuela, please, whenever you want.
Hi, such a pleasure to be here. Thank you everybody for your time and for this amazing opportunity that it just turns out to be one of the best opportunities to talk about in times like this. And what is a better topic than kids? It's just like thinking of them makes us smile. And that's how we should smile when we're planning a city as well. So without further ado, I would want to should I just share my screen at this point? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Let me check if Ivan perhaps has to take out his before you start yours.
Exactly, yes. So it's just telling me that, yeah, okay, perfect.
Go ahead, great.
Okay. Awesome. So let me just do this real quick. Okay.
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay.
Perfect.
Everybody, okay. Perfect. So for those of you who don't know much about Tirana, this is right in the, I'm sorry, it's just for some reason. Okay, so this is right in the middle of Europe. It's if you hear about Albania, you think about this very remote country, but it's really very close, and it's not even eastern as much as it is south central. But the geopolitics and the geography don't always match. So this is where we are, and just a little bit of a context. We're a little bit stuck between 500 years of Ottoman Empire to 50 years of communism, or how we'd like to call it, the North Korea of Europe during the Cold War. Because it wasn't just purely communism in the East Bloc, was a little bit more of a safe self-isolation. And we are there, but not yet. Within the EU context, we are a candidate country, but we haven't still gotten an accession invitation yet. So that is just to show you a little bit of where we're coming from. This is what Tirana used to be, and Tirana used to be the capital city, and it wasn't much larger than just a small neighborhood of any normal metropolitan city today, only 100 years ago. So it was just purely one small neighborhood, mainly constructed by the fascist Italy. So this was the first recorded map of the city. And it grew really fast. This is a satellite image of 89, and just to show you how small it is. And this is in 99, this is 2009, and this is 2019. So this is basically our working plan. This is the now times when we have to deal with this space. Just to give you a little bit of a context on how much we grew in terms of population. In 25 years, we grew by 4 times, I'm sorry, but now we are 1 million. So the last count, and the census is still going, this is a city of 1 million. So you can imagine the shock, the urban shock that you have from a city of only 200,000 people to a city of 1 million, which is basically half of the population of this country. So where to start, in such a congested and such a hectic environment? Well, we thought just start from the center, because that's where the heart beats, that's kilometer zero of everywhere you go, and the whole orientation of where you're going to and what you think about when you're thinking about a city. This is the Skanderbeg Square, which is the center of Tirana. And just to give you a little bit of how it used to look, this was my childhood. So this is in 89, this picture taken from 89, it's the same central square. And as you can see, there's very little movement, which is not to say that there weren't enough people. You still had 200,000 people living in this space, but we weren't allowed to have private vehicles. So we weren't allowed to have any private property, which turned out that, you know, you couldn't drive and you couldn't own a car. And so everybody had to walk to anywhere. And if you see very carefully, you will notice two small buses that are in each opposite corner of the screen. And that was it. Only a bunch of people who were like the Politburo had private vehicles. Everybody else was living in this way back then didn't know, very sustainable way. We thought it was a very poor way to live, but basically it turned out it wasn't that bad after all. Because what happened after the communist regime fell and Berlin Wall fell, people started to own cars. And this, you can see how that pedestrian area that was huge turned out that it was shrinking a little bit more and more and more. And you see some of these vases keeping that space so that cars won't get in. And then cars tried to get a lot more space, and people were owning this car, which was a symbol of making it in the world. You know, they had this property, they could show it anywhere. So they're taking it even to just go buy bread downstairs. So, and then this is what it looked like the first day when we got in the office. So it was like this for more than 20 years, where people were really narrowing streets and making room for more cars and then more cars, and you make more room and you have more cars, and we know that is a never ending circle. So what we thought is we should change that. So after our first 11 months in office, this was the first project we undertook, and this is the same square, same space, but looks like this. This is the first day when we opened it. And I want to show you this picture that it just makes me cry every time I see it, just because it shows how much hunger was there for space. This was a right being taken away from people to own their space and to live in their space and to thrive in that space. And this was the first day, and this is after 1 hour after we had opened the gates from the works, and we had the big celebration that evening. But it didn't end there, because, you know, this was the next afternoon. And to mitigate for climate change, to mitigate for rising temperatures, and we are a Mediterranean country, we made that project even better, and we added 50% of the surface to be green and to have a lot of vegetation and trees, so that it would mitigate the rising temperatures for the square. So you have this little oasis of parks around it, but you still have the plaza. This is how it looked on the first afternoon that it, you know, after the party. So this is how it looks every afternoon. I'd like to show you pictures of the pre-COVID evenings, but even now it looks very similar to this. This is nothing happening. I like to show you guys this because it's just people gather, you know, they're just lounging around, they're just using the space, they're watching their kids rollerblade or skate or ride their bikes in the center, in the square, and they're just lounging around. They don't need to go to a bar, they just have this beautiful public space, because when there is an event, it looks like this. And, you know, it's just super crowded, and people just make the best of it. So, yeah, so this is just a normal space. You take off the cars and you put just barriers so that, you know, these vehicles cannot enter, and people make their own way, and they take their kids and they take the elderly, and everybody's out there having a great time, whether there is an event or not. It's just a right given back to them. The same thing we did with this special space that was right in the very, very close to the center, which was our only central park, if you say, you know, if you think of it, our own New York style central park in Albania. And we had this amphitheater that was very run down during communist times. But it turned out that during COVID especially was a lifesaver. If I want to show you this picture of aerial picture of then you can see people sitting at a distance. And last summer, when nothing was happening, we actually had concerts, and we had kids perform for their school plays and their graduations, because you could afford to do that. You know, you have this enormous space where you could have a relatively safe show, and your life still goes on, and you take still kids to listen to a concert or to a play, or to have them perform in front of their parents because they were stuck at home in front of a computer for so long. So the next project I wanted to show you, and it's another space transformation. This was the bazaar, and I'm sure that you guys relate to this because the market is an epitome of Mediterranean culture, if you wish. I mean, this is not just a place where you shop. This is a place where you interact, where you know the last news from the neighborhood, when you meet people, when you not just find produce, but also find some life and community life. So this space was just behind this bazaar, and I would skip it every time I would go near there because it's just completely run down. And with just a little bit of cleaning and facades, and very minor adjustments, it turned out that now this is completely playing space. Every afternoon, you have families going in and out, and this is how it looks now. And you have your family, your kids, whoever wants there from. We recorded there were only 93 businesses operating in this area. Now, 93 people working in this area. Now there are, from the last count, 1,300 people working in that area. And so economy thrives and community life thrives. Just aerial pictures of how this looks like. And the next story I want to tell you is about again, 100 years ago, this was the city of Tirana, and the fascist architecture who was supposed to build a boulevard so that when Mussolini would come with his army, they could actually have a boulevard to walk in. And so Mussolini's brother-in-law, who was appointed to follow the works, writes a note to the Duce and says, "Dear Duce, I have seen cities without boulevards, but I've never seen a boulevard without a city," because this was basically the first work that got in there, you know, when you see nothing else is happening. And it had been like that for the last 100 years. So we thought, you know what, it's just the time to extend the backbone of the city. And now that backbone of the city is the time not just to have a boulevard for armies marching in, but to have a boulevard for people. And this was planned in the most democratic way, when we're saying, if we have 80% of the citizens of Tirana who don't own a car, who just want to walk or want to ride or want to commute in a sustainable way, let's give them that chance. So the city is built with 80% of pedestrian and bike lanes and little parks, and only one part of it is used for cars, as you can see from the width of the street. Now, because you know, you're giving people this power, they can also take a little bit more than that. So, you know, after this was open, they also took over the car space. So, you know, in the evenings, and especially during COVID, when they had no other options and they're living nearby and there weren't enough cars on the street, this was the best walking path that you could find in the city. So, you know, they're also taking over that. Now, where do kids enter into all this story? Well, of course they do. And I'll tell you how exactly later. Because the next thing that was missing in the city was a playground. In a city of 1 million, we had 0 playgrounds. And the reason why I'm not crying and saying that is just because that was very, very, very fastly solved. And our commitment was, we started from the main one. So we said, well, no, we're just going to tell people how we build playgrounds, and we're just not going to put one slide over here and over there, but we're just going to have one major central playground so that people understand this is something that they needed all along. The fact that they didn't have it didn't mean that they weren't useful or kids didn't want them. It is just something that was missing. You know, saying build it and they will come. And this was the first day when we built it. This was the first day when we opened, and this is really early in the morning. And everybody came, and kids came, and parents came, and you see grandparents came. And it's for everybody, and it included all ages, which again is one of the most important things to do, from 6 months old to 14 years old. So, you know, it has a place for skating, it has a place for toddlers, it has a place for kids who are at a certain age, but it's not just a place for kids, it's a place for everyone. So we said, you know, instead of just building one, let's build one for every month in the office. And we now have 70 of them. And the question I always get is, where do you find the space? And well, the space was always there. The space is, we have space all around us, and that space is, the importance is how we use it. And if you could find space in a city like ours that is completely slaughtered by sprawl and this very, very shocking development that happened very fast, you can find space anywhere, and I'll show you how. And this is just one of their neighborhood playgrounds where we mitigate or we negotiate about parking space with the community, but we also try to make as much space as possible for the kids. This was how it looked before, and this is how it looks after. This is the same space before, and this is the same space after. So these are existing spaces in our own neighborhoods. I mean, if you just go around our cities, we always find these idle spaces. They could be beautiful settings with ugly parking lots. I read this article about these beautiful sites in San Francisco that they were using for parking on level. And it's like, would cars would they get their feelings hurt if you move them underground? I mean, this idea that we have to make space for cars and beautiful spaces in our cities for vehicles is just like mind-blowing, because, you know, they don't have feelings. I mean, they don't get depressed if they don't have a view. They don't get depressed if they don't see sunlight, but kids do. And their future is not as bright, you know, if we put them inside and indoors and not give them the space back. So just an example of, you know, other spaces that were completely idle. And look at this, it's amazing. It was just parking lot. And look at it now. I mean, it's enough for it to have a sports field and a playground and resting area for the seniors, and, you know, and basically it looks better for everybody, not just the functionality of it. I can just give you endless, it's 70 of this, so I'm gonna skip through, but just to show you how important it is to have them all around the city. And that was basically one of our points. And our deal with the community is, if you find us a space, whether it is giving up on your a little bit of the meters of your parking lot, or whether giving up on a little bit of your fence from your private building, or whether you're giving up of any space that you're occupying, but if you find us the space, we'll build you a playground. And how we've done that is all the infrastructure work gets done by the city, and all the equipment is donated by companies, donors, or whoever does business in the city. Because if the city generates 50% of the GDP of the country, it should also generate 50% of solidarity for this country. And what is more appealing to donate as, you know, kids. The other thing, though, is how do kids get from A to B? So, you know, yes, we're taking them away from the computer, and they go downstairs and play in the playground in their neighborhood. But how do they commute? You know, how do they go to school? And I love to show you guys this picture because we had zero parking bike lanes, and we worked with you could have guessed, Dutch company, because they turned out to be best at building bike lanes. So they made us a design of what would be a minimum grid for the city with a certain density that we have with the main arteries of the street. So we have built, and this is a little bit outdated because they told me it's 50 by now, 50 kilometers of bike lanes from zero. And this does not cover the entire city. The city is more than 1,000 kilometers square large, but it does cover the main metropolitan areas. However, if you build the bike lanes and they're not safe, then you haven't built them at all. So what we do is how do you make them safe? And other than just, you know, the technicalities of having a protected bike lane, what we do with teaching kids, this is 4 years old, but we teach kids from 3 years old and on in their nurseries and kindergartens, how to ride their bike on the street. And what does this do? Not only does it teach kids on, you know, the safety of the street, or, you know, how to ride the bike, how to respect right of go, right of turning, but it is a great message for the drivers, because when they see kids riding their bikes just along their vehicle, the first thing they do is they slow down. They are more aware of, you know, this new element on the street that was not there before. They're aware that they are now sharing their space with this not just cute and adorable, but these human beings who have the same right to commute as any person with a vehicle, with a, you know, $30,000 thing, metallic box. So it is an educational process more for the adults than for the kids who are learning how to bike, because learning how to bike is just a small thing, but learning how to bike in the city and owning your space in the city, even if you're 4, even if you're 3, that is something that we have to work on. And we do this everywhere. So, you know, it wasn't just that one time. This happens everywhere. And then there is a policeman who tells the kids to slow down, because, you know, there are rules for them as well. But it's just to show you that every season they can do this, and every place they can do this. And it doesn't matter, you know, if it's a big street or if it's a park, but, you know, they go home and they tell their parents, and it turns out that we're now counting the bikers in the city with these electronic meters. And they only in February, which was the worst month weather-wise, we counted 300,000 kilometers ridden in 2 of our routes of our bike lanes. So for a city that was suffocated by cars, I think it just, you know, tells you that it can be done as well. But other elements around the city that make it playful, and because we're thinking of kids, but it's not just for kids, is how we prioritize pedestrian, how we respect them. Instead of just having to wait for cars, why not make it more pleasant to cross the street instead of just more safe? It is both a message for the drivers, and it's both a pleasant way for the pedestrian who are extremely stressed at crossing streets in cities like ours. There are certain elements that might seem small but are equally important. And like I said, in addition to the bike lanes, widening the sidewalks is another thing that has given an extreme positive feedback to the access in the city, and to making it livable and pleasant and child friendly as well. Small things like, you know, putting a bench with a chess table, or, you know, painting our electric boxes with certain characters, which I'm not showing you here. Those things really make a difference. And using the park spaces, like our public park spaces for sports, as we do with all the schools, where all the gyms and all the surrounding area of the school is used after hours, so after school hours, for community sports and for all sorts of trainings and courses for kids of all ages. That, you know, fills out the day for parents, and it's also extremely healthy and profitable for the city. I wanted to show you this red spread around the city, which is new schools that we're building with the facilities of merging within the community, so that communities can use the school space, which is a prime real estate value, also for afternoon or for evening activities. The next thing I wanted to share with you is our commitment to build a orbital forest. I'm sure you've heard of the vertical forest, of Stefano Boeri's vertical forest in Milan, which is, you know, in urban settings, buildings, when you don't have enough space for parks, you go vertical. So you know, I have these buildings that they are full of vegetation, and they look like a forest, but vertically. So the same concept and the same architect, when he designed our new urban plan, he said, you know, you guys, you need to put a stop to the sprawl and to the development of the urban city. The city needs to concentrate, and in order to put a physical wall that is not a wall that requires, you know, the right citizenship or the right passport, but it's a wall of trees that will both psychologically and practically in urban terms, set the boundaries of what is the metropolis and what is the suburbia of the city. And so his plan is to basically plant trees around this metropolitan area. And in urban development plan, and in terms, it means that within the wall of the trees, you can build tall buildings. But beyond that, it's basically only 2 floors and below. But in order to plant those trees, there is a big enterprise. We need to plant 2 million trees till 2030, and that's our commitment. So far, we are at more than 400,000 trees. And how we do that? We involve everyone. So whether you have a birthday, whether you are going out with your class and you want to celebrate Teachers' Day, or you want to celebrate a concert that you performed really well at, we have trees for everybody. So, you know, you donate a tree to the city, which is your tree. You go and check it out if it's healthy or if it needs something, or, you know, you give a sign, we put a sign that this is my tree. But it's the cool thing in town. And for kids who doesn't have a tree for their birthday, that's kind of lame. Instead of just having iPads and phones and stuff, they just must have a tree. So it became kind of like a fun race, but it involved everybody and also grown-ups. So, you know, you have whole companies taking over sites in here and, you know, planting trees in a massive way. And that's how you do it. We had our firemen who were fighting against some really wildfire a couple of years ago in one of these hills. And once the fire was off and, you know, their trauma was down, they went and planted trees in that same space, just, you know, as a symbol of continuation of life and respect for nature. So, you know, you're never too young to plant a tree in the city, and we want to tell everybody that, and we want to have the kids involved. They learn how it is. They also have all schools have the opportunity to have their classes in nature on every Tuesday in our parks, where we make room for them. We have seats and stuff like that. When we have people from our own, we teach them about, you know, how to respect the space and how you can learn out of it and, you know, check out the tree that you had planted before. So like I said, all ages, they're welcome. The next project that I wanted to show you is streets for kids. And it's other than what I was telling you on the big streets and what is the city street. The white print here is a school in one of our non-central neighborhoods. And the green area is all the space that we have turned into pedestrian/park. So once the kids get out of the schools, it's not enough that cars slow down, because it's not, you know, they are still there. So what we said is, how about cars go around and find their space, but once kids go out of the school, the whole area around the school should feel like a park. So we're taking away the fence of the school. We're taking these huge fences when, you know, it would seem like a prison. And we are merging what is the residential area with where most of them live, actually, into the neighborhood park / the school park. So once a kid goes out running out of the school, they're not going on the street and, you know, and you're watching out for them to cross it because the car is passing by. But they're running out in the park. You know, they're just running out from the school to the park. And how to do this having them involved and how to, you know, convince people to take away that space for cars and for movement and for parking, well, you have them involved. And this is a project that is just finishing up. We are working with NATCO, and we had kids do, I don't know how many workshops on, you know, they draw how they want their playground, and they are part of, you know, making all this space theirs. This is space where parks would be, where cars would park before, and they're just painting on it. This is the type of game we want to play here. This is the type of tree we want to have here. They also designed benches. And I have pictures of the benches, which are extremely weirder because they're wider when they can put their bags and their jackets, but they also were part of doing it as well. And the next project that I wanted to show you is we went through a major earthquake in late 2019 that destroyed practically lots of neighborhoods. And our catastrophe / opportunity was, if we need to rebuild these neighborhoods, why not do it right? And while we were doing it also the pandemic hit, and the doing right by the neighborhoods turned out to be also pandemic resistant. And what I mean by that is, we always talk about accessibility. We always talk about a sustainable mobility in cities, and these are the big words that us in the city we have to deal with. But we do not have to overcomplicate it. And the new neighborhoods, they are a perfect example of mixed usage, where we are moving state institutions, where we're offering space for businesses, but we're also combining it with residential space. So how you maximize the green space in between? It's the parks that are, all the green space in between buildings that are used for businesses after business hours. They are green spaces that we use for the people who are living there, who are coming back to work, who are coming back home, or for their kids who are coming back from school. You have all these cities that have divided neighborhoods. This is the financial district, and this is the market district, and this is the residential district. And these districts, whatever they are, however beautiful they might be, they only get a certain usage. In the financial district, nobody goes in the evening to play with their kids because it's too far from where they're living. But if we have the mixed usage, that means that we're maximizing the space all throughout the day. And this became a little bit famous because it was a design of the COVID-free neighborhood, which is basically saying that there is enough space for everybody to get their healthy green hours, even though they might be isolated. There is enough space for employees who are working, in businesses and in congested offices to also work outdoors if they want or if they wish to. So this is our last project and our newest project, which it might be a little bit newer to when I was talking with Charles a few months ago. But this is something that we're looking forward to as well. And there's enough space for kids and it's enough space for parents, because if you build it for them, you basically build it for everybody else. Thank you so much, you guys, for having me here. It has been a pleasure to share this with you.
Thank you, Anuela. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Creo que ha sido una presentación en la que realmente estas imágenes valen mucho más que 1000 palabras, ¿no? Nos has acercado mucho a la realidad de Tirana y ha sido casi prácticamente como visitarlo en persona. Así que muchas gracias. Le voy a recordar al público que puede hacernos llegar sus preguntas a través del chat y vamos a aprovechar, si os parece, estos minutos que nos quedan para algunas cuestiones que yo tengo aquí, tanto para Anuela como para Iván. Mi primera pregunta está orientada hacia la mirada infantil, ¿no? Iván hablaba de que la mirada de los niños y niñas hace que los proyectos sean más inclusivos, y también Anuela subrayaba que no son solo proyectos para ellos, que son proyectos para toda la ciudadanía, ¿no? ¿Qué, digamos, aportación diferencial creéis que aporta la mirada infantil a los proyectos en la ciudad? ¿Qué disrupción provoca meter esa mirada en en nuestros proyectos urbanos? Iván, igual quieres tú.
Sí. Bueno, yo creo que la mirada, o sea, la diferencia es clave, ¿no? Porque nosotros tenemos un ejemplo, por ejemplo, aquí en un parque que llamamos el Parque de la Salud y del Deporte, que es un parque que habíamos pensado diseñarlo de una manera y enfocado a los deportistas en sí, ¿no? Y sin embargo, la mirada de los niños, hicimos con el Consejo de la Infancia que hicieran una valoración de ese parque y qué se podría hacer. Y ellos dieron con la clave, y es hacer un parque para todos y todas, no solo para los deportistas. Decía, porque mi amama, mi aitite, igual no puede jugar al baloncesto, igual no puede andar en bici, pero sí puede jugar al ajedrez conmigo aquí. O ¿por qué no hacer, pues para motricidad de las personas mayores, pues un esto? Y diseñaron un parque en el que cabíamos todos y todas las leyoastarras. O sea, todos los vecinos, fuera la edad que fuera, tuviéramos la condición física que tuviéramos, podíamos hacer parte, ¿no? Yo creo que normalmente los mayores nos centramos en un solo objetivo y la mirada, la mente de los niños y niñas es mucho más abierta, más inocente, y esa inocencia lo que hace es que desde luego nos dé pistas de qué debes tenemos los mayores o qué envenenamientos ya por la vida que tenemos, ¿no? Pues estamos sufriendo.
Muy bien, es que ricasco, Iván. Anuela, what do you think?
I agree. And one of the things that I'm following very closely, and I love the approach, is adventure play. And as adults, especially as parents, we are always apprehensive of, where we're sending our kids, or, if they are going too hard on a slide, or if they're crossing the street. We have this anxiety all the time, whereas they just want to play. And they are a lot more capable than we think they are. And by putting them in this very classical style of games that we think it's the best, we are taking away all the opportunity and all this amazing possibilities for them to learn from other things. Kids have fun even with like a bunch of mud and a log. And incorporating these elements into their play, which comes out of, the drawings they make, or when you ask them, it's like, what's the best thing you want to play with? And they'll say a stick, and it's just like, it's just so simple, yet it's something that we forget and we don't think of it. And we think about all the risks. We don't think about what it teaches them, about responsibility, about joy, about the fantasy of using that stick in 1,000 different ways. And so I think that it just opens new perspectives. And what we also learned is that you don't really need to just have playgrounds. You just need to have play space, which is a completely different approach. It doesn't have to have plastic equipment all the time. It doesn't really have to have equipment, because if you just give them safe space, they will do wonders with it. And I think that for us, even within this last years, we've grown from the first project to the second project to the third project, now thinking about making this an inclusive environment altogether, without necessarily dictating the rules of the game, just giving them a lot more freedom and a lot more space to do their own thing and to have their own play instead of dictating it.
Ok, thank you, Anuela. Tengo una pregunta que tiene que ver más con Charles, of course. You can add
No. You give others the chance, please.
This question is also, I think, for you. Ok, quería haceros una pregunta sobre indicadores. Me voy a explicar. Anuela nos empezaba su presentación con esa imagen de la plaza central de Tirana, cómo por las circunstancias socioeconómico-políticas no había tráfico, cómo el tráfico poco a poco invadió esa plaza y cómo luego se han hecho esfuerzos para recuperarlo. Desde la perspectiva de Bilbao Metropoli-30 hemos visto cómo indicadores que en una época son éxito, por ejemplo, el tráfico rodado, hubo una época en la que las grandes ciudades tenían mucho tráfico, con el pasar del tiempo se han convertido en indicadores que precisamente indican lo contrario, que es que el tráfico es un indicador negativo y a eliminar. Ahora mismo Anuela hablaba de que los niños no piden tanto parques de juegos, sino espacio para jugar. ¿Hay algún indicador que hayáis conocido de vuestra experiencia en la que la mirada infantil os ha conectado con otros indicadores de los que inicialmente manejabais? Es decir, que quizá teníamos a la hora de proyectar una iniciativa, un proyecto municipal, una idea de que lo bueno era esto y los niños, niñas nos han dicho, no, lo importante es esto otro. ¿Habéis tenido alguna experiencia o algún insight en ese sentido?
Nosotros sí que hemos tenido con la experiencia de la tipología de los columpios, como bien comentaba Anuela, ¿no? Sí que es verdad que, bueno, cuando te venden un columpio, te lo venden para una cierta franja de edad y eso lo que hace es que tú limitas a eso, ¿no? Y nos decían, niños y niñas nos decían, es que claro, estos columpios, aunque pongan que son hasta 12 años, pues nosotros no queremos jugar ahí, queremos jugar en el campo, queremos jugar en la hierba. Es algo, pero que yo creo que encima va más allá de las propias administraciones, ¿no? Sino también los propios padres o madres, ¿no? Que muchas veces decimos, no pises la hierba. ¿Cómo no vas a pisar la hierba? Si la hierba es para disfrutarla de ella, no para tenerla simplemente de adorno, ¿no? Y, ay, cuidado que te manchas. Joder, si tenemos lavadoras, tenemos de todo y en casa, que no pasa nada. Si vamos a lavar la ropa, igual. Entonces, yo creo que es una mirada más general, ¿no? Y ellos sí que tienen esa visión y a nosotros sí que nos han hecho pensar y repensar muchos de esos parques y olvidarnos un poquitín de lo que son los juegos y centrarnos más en otro tipo de acciones.
Es que ricasco, Iván, sí, muy apropiada esa forma de ver, ¿no?, sus peticiones. Anuela, perhaps, Marian, no sé si estoy a tiempo. Nos ha llegado una pregunta que quiero dirigir a Anuela por parte de Gochon Bernaola, de Innovasque. Además, quiero poner en valor la trayectoria que Innovasque ha desarrollado precisamente. Iván lo mencionaba al principio, el apoyo de Innovasque en estos proyectos de involucración de los niños. Y Gochon dirigía una pregunta a Anuela en el sentido de qué papel juegan los niños en el diseño de esa nueva ciudad de Tirana que nos has enseñado con tus imágenes, y si son usuarios o también son prescriptores. Un poco ese rol, ¿qué papel han jugado los niños y niñas en esos proyectos? Es que ricasco, Gochon, aprovecho.
Yeah, so just a little bit of addition to the indicators that you asked before I go into Gosha's question. I think that the best indicator that a city could have on how well it's run and how successful it is the quality of air. That's an indicator for space, for good usage of space. That's an indicator for good planning. That's an indicator for quality of life. And so while we could, we have thousands of them, everybody works in the municipality. We have our strategic plan, our KPIs and stuff like that. But I think that if you want to measure the quality of a large city, small cities might have it easier. You just look at how their air is improving and if it has improved during an administration. And I would suggest it to anybody who's voting, for their mayor or for whatever. Just go and look at the data. That is the best indication, in my humble opinion, as a parent, but also as an administrator. In terms of how we involve kids, we do that in a variety of ways. Iban here talked about the Children Council. We have our Children Council as well. But other than the Children Council, which might be, a dictated set of topics that we are, well, not a dictated, but a limited certain topics because you're gathering them for a certain idea. we have consultations in schools all the time about their neighborhood. We do it with volunteers. We'll be working with the GSD, the Graduate School of Design at Harvard. Students over there would come and work for entire semesters with their students locally, and they would go around schools and talk to the kids about what they would change in their urban surrounding. Our urban plan as a whole is, let's say, the Constitution. How you make specific laws is, a whole other process of collaboration within the community. And kids, they don't really have to sit on a table to tell you that. The way they're using what you are suggesting tells you, what you should make with that space. So, yes, you could have them sit on tables and draw things, which we do, but, the way they are using it, if you see kids playing in the street and they're waiting for cars to go by, obviously that's not a place for cars. That's a place that you need to close and make it pedestrian so that cars can go around. If you see lots of kids biking and there's no bike lane, obviously, there is a need for a bike lane in that area. If you see lots of kids playing football, but there is only one playground but no sport field, then, you should do that. So it's basically, it's a lot of, yes, there is a lot of communication, and yes, it's the city's job to make it so that they can tell or they can ask for things in a specific and in their own way, but it's also the city's job to follow the cues that they are telling us through the way that they're using the space within the city.
Okay, Anuela, thank you. Vamos a ir cerrando el webinar, pero antes, Charles, I don't know if you want to add any comment or...
No, I mean, Godson asked the question I wanted to ask, which has been answered, so that's great.
Okay, thank you. Bueno, pues en ese caso, como estamos ya un poco fuera del tiempo límite establecido para el seminario, si os parece, pues vamos a ir dándolo por concluido. Me gustaría agradecer, lógicamente, a nuestros ponentes de hoy su participación, a Iban y a Anuela. Ha sido un placer compartir vuestras experiencias y proyectos esta mañana, y como este es el último día de este ciclo de seminarios Metrópolis de Futuro, pues también quiero agradecer a todos los ponentes, los y las ponentes que nos han acompañado desde el ámbito internacional y desde el ámbito de nuestro entorno a lo largo de toda esta semana. Creemos que ha sido un encuentro muy rico de aportaciones, y a todas las personas que os habéis ido conectando a lo largo de estos días para escuchar pues estas aportaciones. Y de manera muy especial me gustaría agradecer a Charles Landry su papel de moderación, su apoyo a Bilbao Metropoli-30 en la organización y en el diseño de este seminario, a Marian Maruri por su trabajo de traducción impecable a lo largo de estos días. Creo que no se lo hemos puesto muy fácil, en mi caso creo que tampoco, no he sido demasiado paciente a la hora de hablar. Y también a los dos compañeros de Bilbao Metropoli-30 que han trabajado en la sombra, a Carlos Alonso y Ainhoa Irazu, que han hecho posible que este seminario haya sido posible. Así que, sin más, eskerrik asko guztioi. Thank you so much for being here, and we wait for you again in Bilbao, and let's hope in Tirana in the near future. Eskerrik asko, asteburuon, mila esker.
Eskerrik asko zuei.
Agur, agur.
Good.